Hey, what is up guys? And today I have yet another video for you. This one's slightly different than what I usually do. What you're seeing in the background is a speed art of me doing some web design for this kind of mock Yeousch page thing. It's not gonna happen. It's just me messing around for whatever reason. Now I am actually working on the website for real, but I wanted to do this as a mock-up just for fun. And then what I've actually done is I have recorded my voice throughout the whole thing. It's a really long commentary of me speaking while I make this completely live. And that's what the next part of this is. If you don't want to watch really long videos, really just go away from this video. Simple as that. But if you do want to hear me speak, or you just want to watch the video, then you're welcome to it. Anyways, if you do enjoy the video, thumb up or down depending on, whether you liked it or not. Anyways, I've been Midnite, and enjoy the commentary. Alrighty, so I'm gonna do something brand new. I'm gonna commentate while I do what will possibly be a speed art. Either way, it's gonna be a speed art. If the commentary turns out to not be a great idea, or it's just not interesting to me or anybody else, then I will not put that in, and it'll just be a speed art, and you guys won't even know about it. If it does work out, then what I'll do is I'll just cut in all the good stuff, and then you guys will get a roughly 20-minute long video following the actual speed art. So that's something you guys might enjoy to watch, but I will test it out. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. So what I'm doing today is pretty much a follow-up of some actual work that I've been doing. Now the actual work is a splash page for Yeousch.com, which is currently down just due to some technical difficulties, should I say. So, like I said, you guys will pretty much see everything to a certain extent. I'll be cutting in things depending on how interesting they are. So if I say a bunch of interesting shit and then I say a bunch of boring shit, you'll only see the interesting shit and it'll cut through. Kind of like a really elongated progression. So it'll be, instead of just showing you images, it'll be a bunch of clips, one after another. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is obviously file new, and I always go with 1280 720 because first of all it's pretty much my resolution, and it's just 720p. It's always a good start. If you guys want something to kind of start off with, that is a good start. Unless you have a super big screen, in which case, it's whatever you feel like doing. I always go for a kind of semi-dark just to switch things up to begin with. And with web design, you always want a content area and everything else kind of seeps through. So because I don't actually have measurements, or I'm too lazy to actually get them, what I'll do is I'll make a brand new file which is exactly 1000 pixels wide. I'll fill that in a new layer and then bring it over to what I already have. And that should be in the middle. As long as I just darken it up a bit, you should be able to see that. So that is now the content area. Now on websites, really nobody's going to have a screen smaller than 1000 pixels wide, which is why the content area is always that. It's pretty nice and neat kind of way to have a website, and you really won't see anything wider than that. If I were to go to YouTube on my own screen, you'd see that it's really not that much larger than this. So that's why I did that, and this is pretty much what this whole thing is going to be. Now it's not going to be a super long commentary just to teach you guys shit, but I will be speaking over it just for whatever. And guys, if you hear things in the background, then I guess you hear things in the background. It's not the prime time for me to be recording shit. I do have, full family in the house, so you might hear some stupid shit. Anyways, first job is banner. Every single website has a banner of some sort. Now, it always starts with the logo, so I'm going to go ahead and open the Yeousch logo if I can find that. Here we go. So what I just did there is I just went file open and then got it out. But if you want to take it directly into your file, then I suggest you actually just go file place. It's much quicker, but if you want to get to a file over and over again, file open is probably a better idea. So what I'm going to do now is just going to go to image size, and switch that to 200 pixels in height. Switch off constraints and just go to 1000. So now I have this, and I'm just going to keep using this file to get direct implementation of real measurements, because unless I'm in Illustrator, I really will never get that. So that's why I'm doing it here, and I don't want to do this in Illustrator because it's just unnecessary. So that's the first thing I've got. I've got the banner, got the logo, got the content area. That's the main thing. Now a website will be a lot taller than this, meaning it will go down much further, and you got to think about the kind of what I call the infinite space or the fall off. Now website, the graphics are mainly going to be in the background, and they're going to fade off to the bottom, fade off to the right, and the banner is the only thing that's going to be completely the same all the time. Because it's like a website that you know, if it doesn't matter how big the screen is, if the left side and the right side kind of fade to black, and then the actual background of the website is black, then your screen can be huge, it can be really small, and it'd be pretty much the same. Same with the website going further down. If it has more content, it'll just keep going downwards, and it'll replicate just a slice of that background over and over and over again. And to you, it'll look like a major piece of content, but to the actual coder, it's just one pixel slice at the bottom of the background, repeated over and over and over again, going downwards. Now, it doesn't have to be one pixel slice, it can be like 20 pixels, but either way, it's just going to repeat that over and over again. Now, if you've got like a YouTube background, you can actually do that if you want to. I think you can actually repeat X. I'm not sure if it's repeat X or Y, but on the X-axis, let's say it's up and down, then it would be repeat X. And, you know, if Y is left and right, then it would repeat to the left and to the right. So that's a quick kind of unnecessary tip, I guess. Now I'm going to have the logo pretty obvious, just not as big as that, and on the right side, because I tend to just like having things on the right side due to some knowledge I got from print, which says that when you open a page up, the first kind of area that you see is the top right of the right page, which is why I kind of tend to do that. And because the logo is actually a Y, I'd rather not have a Y and then Yeousch to the right of it. If I have Yeousch to the left of it, then it's not as much as a kind of Y Yeousch, if you get what I'm saying. Because the actual logo is a Y, so repetition in terms of logos probably isn't a great idea, which is why I'm going to do it this way. So that's my kind of snippet of logic, and you'll be seeing a lot of that here as I kind of progress along this. Now I don't have the exact, actually I think I do have the exact kind of font for this, but I'm not going to use it because I have something which is very similar, and in my personal opinion it looks better. And since this isn't official, it's just for fun, I guess I can use whatever I want. Now I actually got a really more detailed gradient, which I'm going to open up from here, which is this right there. I'm going to find that links, because I want to try and find some continuity, because this splash page actually is real. Now not this specific iteration, but this is real. This is something that potentially could be on the website. So I figured I would kind of take some pieces from this, and I am doing this live, so I'm just grabbing this this layer right here just to copy the layer style. Now what I usually do is go for a really subtle gradient, which is this one right here. But since I want a little more detail, I'm going to go ahead and use this one if it works. So I don't need it that dark at the bottom. I'm just going to go with the gradient overlay. And I've got some blue in here just to kind of match. I'm just going to go a little less saturated. So taking out the blue, if you go further to the right, you'll have more color. So I'm just going to go to the far left. Okay, and that's what I've got so far. Now I prefer to have things with gradients because to me it's nicer to look at. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the gradient overlay and just set it to multiply, and that should be an instant gradient if I kind of mess around with it a little bit. And I'm going to add a just a really simple glow right at the bottom to show the difference. I am just messing around. This isn't going to turn out to be amazing, but it is going to turn out to be just something random for you guys to see how I actually work. And I know a lot of people who have actually seen me work are kind of surprised by how simple it is. I mean, there is no master deal here. I just kind of do whatever is right, and you know, sometimes I do use a preset, but like I said in my previous videos, using a preset, using it well, is a really big deal, and it's really important to be able to do that. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. And I'm just messing around, not really with a kind of major intent in mind. I just want to get an effect out and get it to work. So this kind of rectangular marquee tool is great for making effects like this. You can do this in a bunch of different ways, but this kind of glow is something I enjoy doing because it's a really simple effect that looks cool. And repeating it is something that I tend to do quite often if I'm in this kind of situation. I like to use this kind of separator slash kind of divider. This glow effect is super simple to use, and I do use it quite often when I'm put in that situation. The reason is it's just really easy to do, and it looks nice. So if you guys find something like this and it looks nice and it's really easy to do, you really have no reason not to use it. And this gradient for me right now is not looking that great, so I'm going to go to image mode and try and go to 16 bits per channel just to make things look a little better. So I am just going to grab that and pretty much redo this, copy and paste, delete that. Oops. Delete, paste that in. I actually need that selection. My bad. Alright, just put that in. We'll redo the layer style. And then go to gradient, and the way I did it before was simply if you just set this really quickly to multiply and then turn down the opacity. If you've got like a kind of grayish color instead of a pure black, which is what I've got right there, then it will do a gradient for you really quickly. The only issue is you get this kind of banding, which does not look good. Now banding is when you got a gradient, but instead of being really smooth, it's in kind of blocky lines. And opacity is something which really crunches the pixels a lot. So that's why I like to kind of do my own gradients instead of doing that opacity thing. I was trying to do things as quickly as possible, but sometimes doing things quickly is not always the best option. So I'm actually going to flip this, I think, just to kind of match the color. I'm not sure if it'll work out, but I'm going to go for something super subtle just to kind of get a more professional look. The more subtle it is, the better it is. And that's something I tend to always remember no matter what I do or no matter how I do it. And you know, you don't have to, but follow light. I mean, why not? You got some light below there, why not kind of get a little bit of light on the banner itself? It just kind of makes sense, really. Now that's kind of really simple banner. It's got zero graphics on it so far, but it's just something that I figured I would put on. I'm going to go ahead and grab these links right here. I'm just going to go to get completely every single thing in this group right here and just drop it in. Yes. And I don't actually need these kind of selection things right here. The lights are just to let you know that they are clickable. Now knowing something else, you know, it might sound kind of obvious, but you need to know when something's clickable, otherwise there's no incentive for you to click on it. If it doesn't look like it's clickable, you're not going to try and click it. And the whole point of doing something like this is to have it as a clickable option. So I'm going to go ahead and line these up. There's a lot of ways to do this, but I'm just going to use the align tool, and I don't really use, well, it's not a tool per se, but it is something that I use quite often, and I don't quite know exactly how to use it, but I'm trying to get better at it. It's not really that complicated, but it is something, like I said, that I'm trying to get better at. I'm just going to line the top edges and then space them out as I can. I know that in a few programs like Flash, for example, you can actually space things out, and it's a really useful feature that for some reason Adobe didn't adopt in Photoshop, which is kind of annoying. It's kind of annoying that some of the programs from Adobe do have some functionality that others don't, and I don't quite understand why. I mean, for example, After Effects. Even though After Effects is kind of a program in its infancy, it is a program that deserves these extra features that aren't available. Now, obviously, it's video editing rather than image editing, but I still think that there are some tools in Photoshop that After Effects can benefit from, and vice versa. I know a lot of people actually switch to After Effects every now and then to try and do things in whichever way they choose to, but most of the time they do it just for like a vignette or something, because there's some built-in program or whatever that happens to be in After Effects. And although that seemed like a smart idea, I would advise against it. It's a lot easier to just stick to one program, and it's something that I would really invite everyone to do, because if you're good at one program and you're concentrating on one program, it's then easier to branch out into something else. Don't keep flipping between programs to do something you could do in just one. So I'm not going to go all the way to After Effects just to get myself something like a vignette. If you learn how to do it in this program, then you're really saving yourself time. Partnership. There we go. So something else, which is something done really often in typography kind of things, is to have a kind of really thick and bold text followed by something thinner. And the reason is they just kind of look good together. And there isn't much of an explanation for it, but if there's something fat and something like a subtitle, which I've got here, which is thin, then it kind of looks better just to have it like that. And it's also good to show some variation between different fonts. I'm not just gonna have one font that's super thin, super wide, and then have almost the complete opposite just for the sake of it. It just shows that there's some variation. You don't just want to have one font. It shows uniformity, but it's better to mix it up and have at least maybe 2 or 3. The first one will be mainly for titles, second one for subtitles, and then the third one would probably be for content. And that's something that most people kind of stick to because it makes sense to do it that way. It also means that you can kind of prioritize them in priority, so it's a kind of hierarchy. You want it so the most important one, which will be the one that controls the titles, will be the one that you tend to use a lot more. So for example, partnership is a big link that I want people to see as a link, so I'll have it as big and bold. And then program will be something which is a kind of a secondary. Therefore, I'm going to have it light and thinner. Therefore, so it's kind of different to look at. Now, everyone has a personal taste, but for me, I like to have darker colors below and then lighter colors above, unless some sort of, I don't know, maybe I've got some light like I have here to actually feed off of. And if you want a really subtle gray, the best thing to do is just duplicate the same color twice, and then either go a little darker or a little brighter depending on what you're feeling like. I'm going to go both ways. I'm going to go a little brighter and then go this way and go a little darker. Now, there's kind of 2 ways to do it. If you want to have a really inconspicuous kind of light, instead of just going downwards to go darker, just go downwards and to the left a bit to get it a little more desaturated, or go downwards and then to the right. If you go downwards and to the right, you'll make it a more saturated dark. If you go downwards and to the left, it'll be a less saturated dark. So it depends. Do you want to be a dull dark, or do you want it to have to be kind of a more colorful dark? So if I wanted it more colorful dark, I'd pick a color like this, and then have the other one as the kind of opposite. And then if you flip them over, or you can alternatively just click OK and then click reverse. But that's what I ended up with. So I'm just going to copy that layer style by right clicking and then just pasting it. A lot of people actually don't know that you can copy and paste layer styles, and for a really long time I didn't know that either, but it is a super useful feature and it saves you a lot of time. So yeah, I suggest using it as often as possible, and if you're going to be using it over and over again, just make it a preset. It's a lot faster. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much done. Now it's not amazing, and the FAQ kind of looks out of place, but that is easily solved just by replacing the coloring. So I'm just going to go to FAQ, and I have things on separate layer styles because it's different for every sort of text, and everything works differently. So if you want to kind of get the FAQ and then have those brackets in the same layer, you won't be able to have 2 different layer styles. You can't just select one area to have a certain layer style on. So you need to just have that on a different layer. Layer styles are for that layer. You can't have it for a specific part of that layer and not the rest of it. At least, I don't know if there's a way. What I'm going to do here is just change it so the brackets are a little thinner, if I can, and then move them along. Now, a lot of people don't actually know that you can do this, but if you just go to the character, which is from Window Character, you can actually change how wide and how tall the text is. And I do it sometimes if I want to kind of get something which is thin but make it wider, as in make it go further across instead of it being super light, super thin and tall. then it's something you can control. Now, obviously don't do too much, otherwise it's just going to look stupid, but that's a tool that most people don't think to use. So that is pretty much a really simple banner. Now, at the moment I'm seeing that it is pretty big. I mean, 200 pixels might be too much, so I'm just going to go ahead and drag this layer up, and remember to drag everything with it so it doesn't lose or leave anything behind. And also lights it up a lot, so I'm going to go ahead and Command T and then just bring it down so I actually get that darker stuff that I left behind. And there we go. Now the first thing that I've noticed is that the logo and Yeousch kind of look a little out of place where I put them. So I'm going to just grab both of those and make them a little smaller, and then scooch them up to the corner a little more. So when things are kind of floating around, you think differently about them. So when something's floating around, something's close to an edge, it's something that you'll see differently. If something's floating around, I know I'm repeating myself so often, but if it's floating around and it's kind of bold, then you kind of want to click on it. If it's to the side and it's hugging an edge, you think less of it as a link itself. So that's a really quick tip. If partnership, for example, was just super bunched up in the corner, I'm actually going to move it for you so you can see. If that was super bunched up literally really close to the corner, it doesn't really look like something you'd be motivated to click on. Now everything is trial and error, like I said, but you want to mess around with things quite often. Well, after you've gotten to a sort of milestone, then save it. So I'm just going to call this Yeousch page. Remember to name things in a way that you can remember them, which is kind of obvious, but a lot of people don't do it. I have a friend who just makes everything test 1 through 1,000,000. So test 1, 2, 3, 25, whatever. And if you look through his documents, that's all you'll see, because he keeps making video files and they're just test over and over and over again. And I see that sometimes gradients don't work out, and I'm going to try and pick a different gradient just to get a different effect. And I'm picking a darker one because I kind of want this to be less important. So I'm just going to go and zoom in so it's completely zoomed in, and switch to a color which is just nicer. This one's super dark, so it's more difficult to make out, which is why I am lighting it up a bit. It's more of a green kind of color, but I've noticed that the blue here, even though I didn't mean to, looks more like a greeny kind of color. So I'm going to just roll with that and see what it looks like. And because it's a layer style, I can just copy it over and over again as many times as I want without too much hassle. Another thing to note is you can just go ahead and like grab the text, and then if you go to the text tool, highlight it, you can change this kind of setting to whatever you want. So if I go to strong, it looks slightly different than it did before. Now I'm going backwards to forwards. You're seeing now that it looks different. Now each of these depends what kind of setting you're in and how you want it to look. But don't forget to mess around with that. Maybe it'll look a little better. Also, I've noticed that if you have text that's like at a random point, so it's like 11.89 that I have here, it will look almost kind of out of place. Like sometimes it looks less sharp, sometimes it looks like almost pixelated, but if you pick kind of a better number, sometimes it does help. Like I said, sometimes, not all times. So I'm just messing around here really quickly. I think I'm going to go with either sharp or smooth, and also make it a little bigger and much better. So I'm going to find what that is, which is around 14. I still want to keep it kind of small, and I'm going to copy that throughout everything. Remember to keep things uniform. You want things to look like they're all kind of one. And I've noticed that now that I've gone to a different setting, go to program, you'll notice it's set to sharp now. Before it was crisp, and in crisp you'll see that it is darker. So I'm gonna go to sharp and then revert back to the old gradient that I had, and I'm gonna see if I could put on some outer glow or something just to make it stand out a little more. Didn't work. Let's try drop shadow. The fake kind of 3D look is one that's done quite often, so I wouldn't suggest using it too often, but if it works then it works, and I would strongly suggest using it. It's just putting the spread all the way up, turn the size down appropriately, and then matching it up so you get this really small drop shadow. Just going to copy that layer style and put it on the rest. And then I almost forgot to change this to sharp, and this one, and we should almost be good to go with that part. So that's really quick kind of banner. Now it still looks a bit fat, and I've noticed that it's not correctly lined up. So if I go to the links and then select the background, sorry, not the background, the banner, and then first of all I'm gonna have to crop all of this just to make sure I don't fuck it up, and just align those, and you'll see now that they've moved up just a little more, so they're more kind of even with the Yeousch logo. I'm actually gonna see what the Yeousch logo looks like if I line that up as well. Much better. So that's the kind of banner. It's really simple right now, and it doesn't have much graphics to it, like I said at the beginning. But I'm gonna go ahead and think of more things to do with this, and I'm gonna start with an effect that I had a little while ago, which I actually put in what will be the new style for Graphics Central over on Yeousch. So let's go to graphics, and like I said, I've done a lot of iterations of that splash page, and iterations are really important to kind of get used to doing, because as you kind of take a different turn, just make a new save, and then you can go back and kind of take a different route, and then when you're done you'll have maybe 10-20 different styles that will be really great to show to whoever you're working for. So they'll see that they've got maybe 20 different choices instead of what might be, you know, kind of 2 or 3. So don't just actively choose to make either 2 or 3. Keep making things, and as you choose to change things significantly, then actually like completely overhaul it if you want to with a new save. Now I don't think I actually have the effect specifically, but it might be in this old save, so I'm going to look through it and see if I can find it. There it is. So it's pretty much just a bunch of like lines that I made completely randomly. I just decided that they might be a good idea to have, and I put them in. So I'm gonna put the navigation point here. This navigation point is smart. A lot of people don't think to click on it, but if you just click and then move it around, it'll scale it from that point. So I know that in Cinema 4D ARM 13 they had this pivot point kind of thing. So wherever your mouse is where the pivot point will be. So if I put this near the middle and I rotate, it'll rotate around that point. If I were to put it in the corner, it will then rotate around that point instead. So that's something you guys kind of need to keep in mind. I'm going to make it just smaller so it's kind of more discreet, and straighten it up. And I'm holding shift to keep it constrained so it just doesn't kind of start going out of shape, and I'm letting some of the stuff at the bottom just fall off because why not, really? So that's that. I'm going to see if I can change this to different blend modes to see if I can get a different effect. Now I don't know what every single blend mode does exactly. A lot of them are just copies of each other, but it's always a good idea to mess around with them and see if you can get something better than your original. Screen actually does give a good effect, kind of brings out some highlights, but because it's only background graphics, you don't want it to be too conspicuous. So I'm going to go the opposite way and put the opacity down. That's it. That's a really simple banner. Now it's really still kind of fat, so what I'm going to do is make it thinner again and make sure that's right. Yep. This time I'm going to make sure just to make that thinner. Great. Move it up. And then grab the glow. Now the reason I'm using the arrow keys is just to make sure that I don't sort of go too far, and trust me, it's easier to use the arrow keys rather than making a mistake and having to take your time to line it up. I'm going to actually move the glow across just to see what that looks like instead. I'm liking that. So with that kind of there, I'm going to move the links across a little bit so they're a little more featured by the light. And I'm going to go ahead and, because I like the way this has fallen off, I'm going to add a exact same glow just below that. So I'll make that smaller. Now again, I'm using the same thing that I've used before, and you know, it's the same glow, and don't be afraid to kind of reuse this shit, because it's like, you made it, you might as well reuse it. It's completely your decision, and as long as you don't make it look stupid and retarded, then you're gonna get away with it. Now it looks a little dull, so I am going to grab the glow and see if I can just add an inner glow and see what that does. And use a slightly different shade of blue. And it really hasn't done much. So I'm just going to go Command U, or Control U on your Windows computer, and turn the lightness up as well as the saturation. And just colorize that while I'm at it. That's really not doing much. I'm just pretty much just brush it on again. So good thing to do is just keep using the colors that are already in the image. I'm going to set this to overlay from my brush. And follow the same sort of style. There we go. And just for the sake of style, let's try that. I like it. So that is pretty much the end of the banner, and I'm going to make the background darker, because I like to have my backgrounds darker just so they go back into the image and make it so it's the actual content area is more obvious. Let's get rid of that lock. Well, I must be doing something wrong here, because I can't seem to fill this in. Alright, there we go. That worked. Alright, so that's the first kind of part. I'm gonna try and separate my banner a little more by making it darker. Or lighter, I'm not quite sure yet. Let's go ahead and make the content area darker. I think that'll work. I'm just going to go Command U and just turn the lightness down. It's a much quicker way of doing things. You'll notice now the difference between that and the background is, you know, it's a much more significant change, but it's still pretty subtle, so I don't mind it. Now for the content area, I'm going to go ahead and go for a really simple cover flow kind of effect. And what the cover flow effect is if you have an iPod, you'll know what this is. It's pretty much where you see your album art and different kind of albums kind of overlap each other. And I'm not really organizing my layers very well here, but you'll see in a minute what I'm talking about. I'm actually going to use my own artwork just for the sake of it. Let's go with Assassin for the main one since it's my last SpeedArt. Oops. Let's use that and let's drop that in if it lets me. And then resize that beast.
Yeah.
And then all we need to do is grab 2 more and we should be good to go. Let's place this time. Let's use Wasteland's pretty cool. It's a tag version, okay. There it is. And in cover flow things are smaller as they kind of wrap behind. So I'm going to go ahead and place again. And this time we'll go for Bring 2.0 because it's one of my favorites. And I've changed my mind, so I'm not going to go for a cover flow, I'm going to go for a different effect where it pretty much just highlights the interesting things. And it's, first of all, rasterizes. If you place things, it'll put it in as a vector. Now I'm not completely sure what that means, but I think that the original size will never kind of lose quality. So saying that, I'm going to test it out right now. Let's see if I can resize this to make it bigger and see if we lose quality, so I can give you guys a real kind of opinion. It's a bit big. It's roughly 100%. Enter. And yeah, roughly no kind of quality loss. So that is official. If you place something, it'll turn into a vector object, and you'll be able to resize it to its original size and mess around with it as much as you want without too much of a consequence. So I am just picking out the interesting parts here. What I'm going to do is delete parts of them so they just have kind of bars, and Command-Shift-I, which inverses a selection, and I'm going to do the same with Bring 2.0. Now I'm not going to get the exact same sort of selection, but I'm going to try my best here. Command-Shift-I again. First we need to rasterize it. In fact, let's keep it rasterized. I'm just going to mask it out. There we go. And then, since we have a mask, I'm just going to go ahead and copy that over to a Wasteland, if it lets me. Let's just move it over. Like that. Alright, great. So I am gonna first of all just get rid of these edges right here and add to selection. You hold shift while you're doing a selection, you'll see a little plus sign come next to your selection tool. That is actually add to selection. So if you have your pathfinder right here, you'll see that it changes to add selection. Alternatively, you can hold Alt and it'll change to a minus sign, which removes part of that selection instead. And then if you hold Shift and Alt, you'll have kind of the I don't know what it's called, hover over it, intersect with selection. So if I make a square right here, it'll kind of get rid of everything else and just kind of select what I've selected. So yeah, I probably overcomplicated that, but like I said, this is live. I'm not putting much thought into this. So that's done. I'm going to line these up as best I can. because again, I don't have the most primitive of kind of alignment tools here. At least I don't have this distribution tool. That's what I want, really. And nudge that up so it's nice and snug. And then, because I want to move these together, I'm going to call it slideshow and just make that in the center. Perfect. Now really, it's a Yeousch website, so it wouldn't really have my artwork on it anyway, but regardless, I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway, just for the sake of it. Most websites actually do have a slideshow anyway, so I've noticed right now it's not actually in the middle. I don't know why that's happening, but I'm going to do my best to try and put it in the center anyway, just as is. Right. In fact, let's not put it in the center, let's put it right here. See, I change my mind really, really often, and in a SpeedArt, this is the kind of shit that I do all the time, and it's just fun, really. Don't kind of try and trip over yourself. If you want to do a new idea, do a new idea. That's all there is to it. It's completely up to you what you want to do, and if you decide to change your mind, nobody's going to hate you for it, so just do it. And also, if you don't change your mind as often as you want to, you'll notice that just shit starts not going your way, because you might end up with something that you really aren't proud of, or you really aren't happy about. And when it gets to that point, and where you're not happy with what's going on, you're really not in a good position to be making anything in terms of design, because you'll just run out of ideas and you'll get disheartened really quickly. And this mask is not working out for me right now. Let me try this out. Oh, there we go. That's a fail. Right, so that should be lining up just for good measure. I'm going to mask out the group itself and just grab a rough selection that's inside all of these just to get it right, because I want all these to line up correctly. G. There we go, we should be good. It's not working out for me. I don't know what I'm doing here. Okay. There we go. Okay, yet another fail on my behalf, no big deal. And I like using this. We got shapes down here, just don't forget about them. And if you want a rounded kind of edge, this is the best way to do it. I tend to always have some sort of rounded edge if I'm doing something like this. Just even if it's a really minute rounded edges just make things a little more friendly. So I know it seems kind of retarded. You'd want to make something friendly, but trust me, it just looks nicer in the long run. And I'm gonna go ahead and make a little extra just for a margin. Margins are really important on websites. You want to keep some space just to do some extra stuff if you really need it. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a gradient to this. I don't really have anything special here, so I'm going to just edit the one that I use quite often. And there we go, that's not too bad. And keep the background kind of graphics consistent. So I'm going to reuse those lines I had before and just put them on top of that. And let's see how that works out for me. This time I'm going to put the opacity to max and set it to screen, because before I noticed screen looked good. And copy that down just to get a little more. And get some edges as well. And then pretty much just select that. Usually I would just make those a clipping mask, but that's not something I can do right now. Screen. When you have a layer style and you make a clipping mask, most of the time, if not all the times, you'll notice that the clipping mask really doesn't work the way you want it to, because it'll clip. If I make it so you can't see you can't see the effects. You'll see that it does clip to it, but it doesn't quite, if I make it a clipping mask, it clips to the shape, but the layer style overrides it, so it goes on top of both of them, which isn't great, but I want it like this anyway, because I'm just going to set the gradient to overlay, and then have that anyway. If that actually works. Let's try screen, because we're all about fucking around. There we go, looks cool. There we go, I like that. And bevel and emboss, great tool. I set the depth to 200%, and then the size to 0 or 1. Most of the time 0 actually works out for me. And we're gonna make it so it's directly upwards. There's another one in my bed. Let's keep the lights off. Undercover infrared telling me that works for me. And there we go. We got something really nice right there. I'm gonna see if satin will work out for me. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. This time around it kind of has, so I'm gonna turn down the opacity. Satin is a really kind of weird effect that most of the time is difficult to control, so I wouldn't really, I'd advise against using it very often, but sometimes it really does work out, so I'd suggest trying it out and seeing if you like it before ruling out, before saying that you don't want to use it completely. I'm going to turn the opacity of this down a bit, just so the bevel and emboss isn't as obvious. And the next thing I'm going to do is give an inner shadow for this slideshow right here. And I'm just going to make a layer on top, fill it in. Let's just, fill it in. Set the fill to 0. And then inner shadow right here. Let's put the size higher. And that seems to have worked out. Set the distance down and add a stroke to this just for the sake of it. Let's make it a little brighter. And okay that. And one last thing is go to the slideshow and grab this whole shape, the bottom shape, which is this one, and add a stroke to this just to make it so I can see the bottom rather than having to, like, it kind of looks like it fades away at the bottom because it's so dark. So how is green? Set the same kind of green and a little darker, just so we can see that bottom edge. And there we go, looks a little better. Another thing I had in the splash page is kind of this selection arrow that I'm gonna just grab again and slap it in there just to add some navigation to it. I'm gonna duplicate that, send it over, and flip it. Take them out of a clipping mask and set them on top, right there, nice and snug. And then I'm feeling overlay. Nope, doesn't quite work for me. Let's try lighten. In a situation that really doesn't involve you, well, then I'm an idiot. If you really gone, only gets better. That works. Alright, let's go for that. Make sure they're aligned. I'm just gonna press 5. Actually, I don't know if you know this, but numbers 1 through 0 actually affect the opacity. So if you press 1 and go to 10% right here, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 0, which is 100. If you want to have a specific number, press one number right after the other. So if I want 23%, I'll press 2 and 3, one after the other really quickly. So 23. See that? 23. Want to go to 50? Just press 5. Real easy, real simple. Just gonna make sure they're both the same kind of style. Well, blending mode, and that works for me. Now there would be some text right here, but because I don't have any text, it's obviously not gonna have anything there. But I'm gonna add some extra little options there anyway, eventually. One thing I'm gonna do, an idea I had earlier, but I decided not to do it. I'm gonna test it out and see what happens with it. Just on the banner and elsewhere. Let's go to the banner right now and see what we can do. So I'm going to grab this, go across, and do this. Just to kind of give a selection area for that specific part. Just going to try and line it up. Right now it's kind of difficult to see, but I'm thinking that's the point. We only looking for somewhere to be part until we on fire. Hands up, put them high to the sky. Let me set your soul on fire tonight. We not trying to fight. Let me set your soul on fire tonight. And I'm gonna have to move around some of these layers just to make sure they still stay within the boundaries of this thing. Let's move this up. And about. An FAQ. You should be good to go. Alright. So that worked out for me. I'm going to go ahead and, since that worked out there, if an effect works somewhere, reuse it somewhere else. Not only because it speeds up having to do new things all over the place, it actually looks better to have things more uniform. And since this box is going to be a lot larger, I'm going to go ahead and make the radius slightly bigger. The smaller the box, the more you want the radius to kind of be scaled correctly. That works for me. Now I'm going to darken that up a bit and add an inner shadow. I'm not really sure if it's going to work, but it's worth a try. When I add an inner shadow, I like to add a stroke just to define the edge. Otherwise, it looks like it's kind of fading out. There we go. Now I'm gonna just go to convert to smart object, or I could just mask it out, which is what I'm going to do instead. Which didn't quite work out, as you can see. Not the way I planned it, but it's still going to work. In fact, I'm just still going to go ahead and convert to smart object. And then get rid of the stuff I really don't want. Oh yeah, after you've converted to smart object, you can rasterize a layer. It just means that you can get everything that was a layer style into just an ordinary layer. And then what I'm going to do is just add a bunch of random information. I'm going to space this out a little more. Move this over. Another thing to note is the more experienced you get, the more you'll know where to move things without being noticed. And right there you've noticed that. I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but I can see that I've moved things over just to stop the kind of radius being messed up, and this has happened right here. So what I'm going to do is go back to how that was and delete this edge right here. Just really soft brush. That now gives me a sort of seamless edge. And if I move it over, technically it should look a little better. Now all I have to do is use a smudge brush to get the edge of this right here and join it up. Now there are faster ways of doing this. but I just want to do it in a really simple way. The faster ways are usually more complex, which is why I tend to stay away from them when I'm trying to do something quickly. And generally, if something's unnecessary, then just don't bother, because really this is something very simple. It's, you know, a mock-up, so it's not really that serious, but I'm going to go ahead and fill this main area in any way, just for the sake of it. Which hasn't quite worked out, but regardless, let's just turn on the opacity and leave that as it is, because I don't want to dwell too long or spend too long doing this. So it's really simple kind of page so far. You got the stuff on the right, which will most likely be a little content extra box for Facebook information or tweets or something like that. We've got an image kind of slideshow here with a content area, which would be around this big. Let me just go ahead and fill that in for you. There we go. That's an extra content area, and we're kind of missing this edge, which is good. I like the fact that if I line this up for you, if I just not line it up, I just want to show you this. If I get this and make it red so you can see it, and then turn the opacity down, you'll notice that the kind of way this is going, we make this radius really obvious, is like this. Take that off, and then you'll notice that the banner is going the opposite way. So then the banner is doing this. And then what the next part would be, if I was going to keep doing more content areas, would most likely either go the other way, like that, or keep going the way that I'm already going, which would be, if I got rid of this, or just transformed it, and flipped it down here. That's a kind of flow of the website per se, and that is a good idea to do. It just makes things look a little more stylized if you want to go for a uniform but still interesting look. It's also very dark. You gotta kind of think about your screen. For example, I have a really kind of high definition screen, you could say. I've got a Mac, so the screen is generally pretty good. I've got a LED backlit, so it's a little brighter, and most people, if not kind of 50%, don't have that. And you got to consider that if you make something very dark and you can see it on your screen, most of the time they might not be able to see it on their screen the same way. So if I go full screen and then 100%, I'm probably going to end up making this a little lighter to make it, you know, easier for people to see and use. So that kind of concludes that. I'm going to post this as it is completely. Now, I did say I was going to cut some things out, but I want to show you what everything looks like, and then later on, if I'm going to keep doing these, kind of start cutting it apart and just showing the kind of interesting parts. If I start to do a really long one, then I'll obviously have to cut out some shit and make it so it's just the interesting things. Now, in the comments section, feel free to actually tell me things like, you know, I was more interested in this than this. Tell me what was the most interesting part of the video, and then when I do this in the future, when I do a really long one, then I can just cut out the parts that you guys want to see. Cut in the parts, sorry. And I don't want to start cutting out parts that you guys would miss, which is why I want to know from you what would be interesting and what wouldn't be. So go back through the video, or just tell me what was the most engaging part of the video, what was the most interesting part of the video, and what were the things that you learned from or want to hear in the future. Anyways, this probably, you know, I'm not going to be a series. I don't know how often I'm going to do this, but I'm going to call this kind of a SpeedArt commentary. Now, this will still be a SpeedArt right at the end. You'll be able to see it sped up, or right at the beginning. I'm not sure, but if you did enjoy the video, thumbs it up. If you didn't like it, absolutely thumbs it down. It's brand new. If you don't like it, I really do want to know early on. And I have been Midnite, and I'll see you guys around.